Darius Bennett, a black single dad in his 30s, was already 20 minutes late to pick up his daughter from after-school care when he saw the sedan stalled on the shoulder of Route 17. Hazard lights blinked weakly against the gray December sky. Snow clouds hung low over the Ohio hills, threatening the first real storm of December, and the woman standing by the open hood looked utterly lost, like someone who had never been lost before and did not know what to do with the experience. Her phone was dead in her hand, her coat too thin for the dropping temperature, her heels entirely wrong for the gravel shoulder. Darius pulled over without thinking the way he always did when he saw someone in trouble. 10 minutes later, the engine turned over. She reached for her wallet, but Darius was already walking back to his truck, his dark brown hands waving off whatever she was trying to say. He drove away before she could ask his name. That night, Amara asked why he helped someone who did not even say thank you. Darius told her some things do not need witnesses. At 11:47, a black car stopped outside their house. Someone knocked. The house on Maple Street had belonged to Darius's parents before the bank took most of what they had left behind. His father had built the back porch with his own hands the summer Darius turned 12, teaching him how to measure twice and cut once, how to level a foundation, how to drive a nail straight without bending it. His father's deep brown hands had guided his smaller ones' calloused palms steady on warm brown skin. Those lessons had become the foundation of everything Darius knew about work, about patience, about doing things right, even when no one was watching. His mother had planted the rose bushes that still bloomed every June, despite years of neglect, and the vegetable garden that Darius still tended every spring because he could not bear to let it go wild. The tomatoes never grew as well as they had under her care, but they grew, and that felt like something. A framed photo of a beautiful black family. His parents younger, smiling, Darius gap-toothed between them, still hung crooked in the hallway, watching over every change the house had survived. When the foreclosure notice came 3 months after she passed from the cancer that had taken first her strength and then her voice, and finally everything else, Darius had been living in a one-bedroom apartment on the other side of town, trying to convince himself that the house was just a building and buildings did not matter. He failed at that convincing. He bought it back 6 years ago at a county auction the same month Tasha walked out and never returned. He paid $12,000 over the minimum bid because 2 other people wanted it, and he could not stand the thought of strangers sleeping in his childhood bedroom, walking on floors his father had sanded by hand. The porch still sagged on the east side where his father had miscalculated the support beams. The furnace wheezed through every winter like an old man climbing stairs. But the mortgage was his, and that meant something in a town where most folks rented from landlords who lived 3 states away and never fixed anything that could be ignored. Darius ran a mobile repair service out of his truck, a white Ford with 200,000 miles on the odometer and a toolbox bolted to the bed that contained more value than the truck itself. He had bought the tools one at a time over 15 years. Each wrench and socket and diagnostic scanner representing a job well done. A problem solved. He fixed what people could not afford to take to dealerships, which in this part of Ohio meant he fixed almost everything. Alternators in church parking lots on Sunday mornings while families filed past in their Sunday best. Radiator hoses in grocery store lots on Tuesday afternoons, while single mothers juggled shopping bags and toddlers grateful for someone who would come to them. Brake pads in driveways on Saturday evenings while kids watched cartoons through living room windows. The work was inconsistent. Some weeks he cleared enough to put money aside for Amara's college fund, a savings account that grew so slowly it barely kept pace with inflation but grew nonetheless. Other weeks dinner came from the food pantry at St. Michael's, and he told Amara they were helping the church use up donations before they expired. She pretended to believe him. They both pretended she believed him, and there was a kind of love in that pretending. Amara was 7, now small for her age, with deep brown skin and a halo of tight curls that refused to stay in any style for long, but fierce, in ways that surprised everyone who met her, from teachers who expected quiet compliance to neighbors who assumed a girl without a mother would be fragile. She had her mother's dark, coiled hair and her father's stubborn silence, that particular quietness that came from watching more than speaking. She had stopped asking about Tasha 2 years ago, around the same time she started making her own breakfast so Darius could leave early for jobs. She knew which bills sat in the kitchen drawer and which ones her father paid first. She knew the truck needed new tires before winter and that new tires cost more than Christmas. She knew that sometimes her father sat at the kitchen table after she went to bed, his dark brown fingers pressed to his forehead, staring at columns of numbers that never added up. She did not know how to help with any of that, so she helped in the ways she could. She kept her room clean. She did her homework without being asked. She never complained about the generic cereal or the clothes from the thrift store. It was too much understanding for a 7-year-old, but she carried it anyway because that was what you did when you loved someone. That morning, Amara had asked about the woman from the night before. Not the woman at his door, because that had happened after she fell asleep. The woman on the road. She is probably warm and safe now, Darius said, pouring cereal into a chipped bowl that had survived 3 generations of Bennett. Amara studied him with eyes too old for second grade. But you were late to get me. I was about 15 minutes. Mrs. Patterson stayed with you and you stopped anyway, even though you were already late. Darius set the milk carton down. Sometimes helping someone does not cost you anything except time, and time comes back around. Maybe not to you, maybe not right away, but it comes back around. That is how the world is supposed to work. She considered this while chewing her small face serious. What if she was mean? Then I still did the right thing. That part belongs to me. What she does with it belongs to her. Amara nodded slowly, filing this away in whatever mental cabinet 7-year-olds keep for lessons they will need later. Lessons about kindness and integrity and what it means to be good in a world that does not always reward goodness. Darius watched her eat and felt the familiar weight of loving someone more than his own survival. 40 miles away, Claire Whitmore sat in a penthouse that occupied the entire top floor of a building she owned. The Cleveland skyline stretched beyond floor-to-ceiling windows, a glittering testament to human ambition. But she was not looking at it. She was staring at her ceiling, unable to sleep for the first time in years, replaying the same 10 minutes over and over in her mind. Claire had built Whitmore Logistics from a single refrigerated truck her father left her when a heart attack took him at 53. She was 22 years old and everyone told her to sell the truck and move on with her life. Instead, she drove that truck herself for 3 years, learning every route and every way a truck could break down at 3 o'clock in the morning. She negotiated with Teamsters who had been in the business longer than she had been alive. She met with senators and union bosses and investors who looked at her like she was a child playing dress-up. She had fired executives who cried and hired others who thought they could outmaneuver her. She slept 5 hours a night because sleep was inefficient. And she woke every morning knowing exactly who she was and what she wanted. Now she owned 4,000 vehicles spanning 22 states. She employed 18,000 people. She was worth approximately $4.7 billion. She had everything anyone could want and nothing that actually mattered. And she could not stop thinking about the mechanic on Route 17. She had been driving herself, a rare occurrence that her security team hated and her assistant had learned to accept with resigned sighs. The meeting in Columbus had run 3 hours late because the potential acquisition target could not make a decision. By the time she escaped, her patience was worn to nothing. She was too wound up to sit in the back of a town car pretending to answer emails. She wanted silence, the kind of silence you could only find on a 2-hour stretch of empty highway in the middle of nowhere where no one could reach her and no one expected anything from her. Then the sedan died without warning, the dashboard lighting up with errors. Her phone battery followed seconds later. She stood there in the cold, watching cars pass, and felt something she had not felt in decades. Helplessness, the complete absence of leverage. She could not buy her way out of this situation. She could not negotiate with a dead engine. The man in the white truck did not slow down at first. She saw his brake lights flash, then release. Then the lights came on again, and he pulled to the shoulder. And a moment later, he was walking toward her with a flashlight in one hand and a toolbox in the other. He did not know her name, did not know her net worth. He just saw someone in trouble and stopped. She had tried to pay him. He refused. He simply shook his head, said something about paying it forward, and walked back to his truck. He drove away before she could ask his name. By midnight, she had his name, his address, and a summary of his life that fit on half a page. By 1 a.m, she was parked outside his house trying to understand why a man with so little would give his time to a stranger who clearly had so much. She had knocked. He had opened the door in sweatpants and a faded shirt, his deep brown face showing no recognition, no calculation, just polite confusion. "I am the woman from the road. I wanted to thank you properly." And he had said, "You drove 40 miles to thank me for 10 minutes. It was the first time in years someone had made Claire feel like she needed to explain herself. The knock came at 11:47. Darius had been reading a repair manual at the kitchen table, half watching a muted television, when headlights swept across his front window. He did not recognize the car, a dark sedan that probably cost more than his house. He did not recognize the woman who stepped out of it. Then he did. She stood on his porch in clothes that had no business in this neighborhood. A cashmere coat over what looked like silk. Leather gloves that probably cost more than his monthly grocery bill. Her breath visible in the cold air. Her posture somehow both confident and uncertain, like a woman who knew exactly who she was but had no idea what she was doing on the porch of a stranger in small-town Ohio. He opened the door and waited. "I am the woman from the road. I wanted to apologize." "For what?" "For not saying thank you. You drove away before I could, and I know that was your choice, but it is not an excuse. I should have called out. Instead, I let you leave thinking I was ungrateful." Darius leaned against the doorframe. "Lady, I did not think you were ungrateful. I thought you were cold and stressed and probably had somewhere more important to be, just like I had somewhere to be." Her expression flickered with confusion. Most people expect acknowledgement when they help someone. They expect gratitude. Most people are not me. She studied him with intensity. "I know, that is why I am here." Before he could respond, a small voice came from behind him. "Daddy, who is that?" Darius turned. Amara stood in the hallway, pajamas, rumpled curls, tangled eyes, squinting against the porch light. She looked impossibly small and impossibly fierce. He moved aside and Claire saw her for the first time. Something shifted in Claire's face, a softening that did not fit with the tailored clothes and confident posture, something almost like memory. She crouched slightly, bringing herself closer to Amara's level. "I am Claire. Your dad helped me today when my car broke down. I came to say thank you." Amara considered this with the seriousness she applied to everything. "Did you say thank you before?" Claire's mouth twitched. "Not right away. That is why I am here to say it properly." Amara looked at her father, then back at Claire. "She came all this way to say thank you." Darius nodded. Amara looked back at Claire with the direct gaze of a child who has not yet learned that staring is rude. "That is a lot of driving for 2 words. Claire laughed, a sound that surprised even her. "You are absolutely right. It is a lot of driving. But some words are worth driving for. Some things are worth making an effort to say." She straightened and met Darius's eyes. And for a moment, neither of them spoke. "I will leave you alone now. I just needed you to know that what you did mattered. It mattered more than you probably realize." She was halfway to her car when Darius called out, "Claire." She turned up. "It is cold out here, and that coat is not meant for standing around in December weather. You want some coffee before you drive back? I would feel bad sending you home on an empty stomach when there is a perfectly good kitchen right here." She stood motionless for a long moment, her breath fogging in the air. Then slowly, like someone making a decision they did not fully understand, she walked back toward the porch. 2 weeks later, Claire's assistant called to invite Darius to the Whitmore Logistics headquarters in Cleveland. The message mentioned gratitude, a formal acknowledgement, and the possibility of discussing his future. Darius almost deleted the voicemail, but Amara had overheard the message playing on speaker while he made dinner. She said maybe he should find out what the woman wanted. Darius asked why. Amara said in her matter-of-fact way, "Because you always tell me not to close doors before seeing what is on the other side." He drove to Cleveland on a Tuesday morning, leaving before dawn. The building was glass and steel, 43 stories of corporate ambition rising from the downtown skyline. Security guards in suits, nicer than anything Darius owned, checked his ID twice. As a black man in work boots, he could feel their eyes linger a second longer than necessary, the familiar extra layer of scrutiny he had learned to live with. A receptionist offered him water in a glass so thin he was afraid to hold it. He sat in a waiting area that probably cost more than he made in 5 years and waited. When Claire emerged from an elevator, she wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than his truck. But her smile seemed genuine, and she walked toward him without the entourage he expected. "Thank you for coming. I know this is not your usual environment. Nothing about the last 2 weeks has been usual." She led him through hallways lined with photographs of trucks and drivers spanning decades. People stepped aside when she passed phones lowered mid-conversation. Darius had never seen that kind of automatic deference. The way a room rearranged itself around her presence, it made him uncomfortable, doubly aware of being the only black mechanic in a sea of tailored suits and polished floors. They reached a conference room with a view of Lake Erie stretching toward the horizon. A man in a perfectly tailored suit was already seated at the long table. He did not stand when they entered. "This is Ethan Rowe, my chief operating officer. Ethan, this is Darius Bennett." Ethan's handshake was brief and evaluating the kind that assessed and dismissed in a single motion. The mechanic. The way he said it landed somewhere between a question and an insult. Darius felt his jaw tighten but said nothing. There was no point engaging with someone who had already decided what they thought of you. Claire moved to the head of the table. "I asked Darius here because I wanted to thank him properly for his help on the road and because I wanted to show him what we do." Ethan's eyebrows rose. "Show him. Darius helped me when he had no reason to and asked nothing in return. I think the least we can do is show him some hospitality." The tour was elaborate, clearly designed to impress visitors with the scale and efficiency of the operation. Darius nodded at the appropriate moments and tried to ignore how Ethan looked at him, but he noticed things they probably wished he would not notice. The drivers in the break room who would not make eye contact with management. The mechanics in the maintenance bay who worked in a space half the size of his garage at home, surrounded by expensive equipment but lacking basic ventilation or proper lighting. The break room where vending machines charged $3 for a can of soda. He noticed the way people moved around Claire, a combination of respect and fear and careful calculation that seemed exhausting for everyone involved, including Claire herself, though she probably did not realize it anymore. Near the end of the tour, they passed through a maintenance bay where a young technician was struggling with a fleet vehicle. Darius paused, watching the young man remove the same bolt 3 times in a row, each attempt more frustrated than the last. "The torque setting is wrong," Darius said, loud enough for the technician to hear. Everyone stopped. Ethan looked annoyed. Claire looked curious. The technician looked up with the expression of someone caught failing. Darius walked over, took the wrench from the technician's hand, and adjusted the setting by feel his dark fingers moving with easy confidence. "Try it now." The bolt came out clean on the first attempt. The technician stared at the wrench like Darius had performed magic. "Your torque spec sheet is probably out of date." Darius said this model year switched to a different fastener midway through production. Easy mistake if no one updated the documentation. The technician nodded. "Thanks. No one told us about that change. No one ever does. You just have to learn it the hard way or find someone who already has." Darius handed back the wrench and returned to the group. Ethan's expression had hardened into something that looked almost like hostility. Claire's eyes suggested she was cataloging everything she saw. That evening, after Darius had driven home and eaten dinner with Amara and helped her with her math homework, Ethan sat across from Claire in her corner office and made his case. He is a liability waiting to happen. A random mechanic shows up out of nowhere, ingratiates himself, and suddenly you are treating him like a consultant, showing him operations, introducing him to staff. It is irregular. I am treating him like a person who helped me without expecting anything in return. That is rare. Rare does not mean valuable. Rare does not mean trustworthy. Claire looked out at the city lights. When I was 23 with one truck and no idea what I was doing, a man at a diner spent 2 hours explaining freight margins to me. He did not know me had no reason to help. He just saw someone who needed help. I built this company on that moment, she continued. Someone taking a chance on a stranger, someone seeing potential instead of problems. When did we forget how to do that? I have not forgotten anything. I am protecting what we have built. From a single father who fixes cars for a living, from anyone who does not belong in these conversations. Claire turned to face him. And who decides who belongs? Ethan did not answer. They both knew who had been making those decisions. The next morning, Claire asked her assistant for a background check on Darius Bennett. What came back was sparse. A marriage that ended in divorce 4 years ago. A house bought at auction. A mobile repair business that barely broke even. A daughter with above average grades. Nothing that explained why he stopped on a cold road to help a stranger. Nothing that explained why he turned down money he clearly needed. It was the cleanest background check she had ever seen. No debt beyond his mortgage. Ethan used the same information differently. He saw unpaid bills from 3 winters ago, a gap in employment after the divorce, and acceptance to an engineering program Darius never attended. He sees opportunity, Ethan told Claire. A woman worth billions shows up at his door and suddenly he is helpful and charming. You do not find that suspicious. I find it remarkable. Claire closed the folder. Have legal investigate quietly. If there is anything to find, they will find it. A week later, Claire drove to Darius's house unannounced. She found him in his garage, the door rolled up despite the cold, teaching Amara how to repair a bicycle chain while an old radio played classic rock at low volume and the smell of motor oil and cold metal filled the air. They did not notice her at first. She stood in the driveway watching them work. Darius's hands moved with patient precision, demonstrating each step, while Amara watched with concentration so fierce it bordered on comical. When she made a mistake, threading the chain wrong, he asked questions until she found the error herself. You hooked it through the wrong way, Amara said finally. That is why it keeps slipping. Darius smiled and it transformed his face. Good catch, now fix it. She did her small brown fingers careful and precise. When the chain ran smooth, she looked at her father with pure triumph. Claire felt something shift in her chest, a recognition of something she had never had a father who taught instead of demanded, who praised instead of criticized. Darius noticed her. He straightened, wiping his hands on a rag. Sorry for dropping by unannounced, Claire said. You apologize a lot for someone who runs a company. She laughed. Old habit. Darius walked toward her. Amara, say hi to Claire. Hi, Claire. Amara did not look up from the bicycle. Did your car break again? No, I just wanted to talk to your dad. Amara finally looked up, studying Claire with unsettling directness. About what? About how sometimes people surprise you. About how sometimes you meet someone and they change the way you see things. Amara considered this. Daddy surprises me all the time. He knows how to fix everything. Claire looked at Darius. Not everything, but more than most people. They talked for nearly 2 hours while Amara rode her repaired bicycle in circles around the driveway, loops that grew gradually larger as she gained confidence in the repair's holding. Darius told Claire about the engineering program he had been accepted to the summer after high school top model. Full scholarship, a chance to escape the small town that sometimes felt like a trap. He told her about this call that came 2 weeks before classes started, his mother's voice shaking the diagnosis that changed everything overnight. He told her about the years spent caring for her while his marriage crumbled around him while Tasha grew tired of competing with a dying woman for her husband's attention and eventually stopped competing at all. He told her about the decision to buy back the family house instead of starting over somewhere new. The irrational attachment to walls and floors that held memories he could not let go of no matter how much easier it would have been to walk away. He spoke without self-pity, without bitterness, just facts arranged in the order they happened. Claire told him about the early years of Whitmore Logistics, the 18-hour days that stretched into 18-hour weeks until she forgot what normal felt like. The investors who tried to push her out because she was young and female and did not play golf or laugh at their jokes. The partners who disappeared when things got difficult and reappeared when the money started flowing. The moment somewhere around year 15 when she realized success had cost her every meaningful relationship outside of work, every friendship that was not transactional, every chance at a family of her own. The loneliness that lived in the penthouse like a permanent resident, always there when she came home, always waiting. She did not know why she was telling him any of this. She did not tell anyone anything. Darius listened completely without interrupting, without judgment, without that look people got when they were formulating their response instead of actually hearing what you said, already planning their next words while yours were still forming. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "You built something real, something that employs thousands of people. That is worth being proud of. It does not feel real most days. It feels like a machine I cannot stop. Machines can be rebuilt, adjusted. Sometimes they just need someone to look at them with fresh eyes." Claire understood then what made him different from everyone else she had met in 2 decades of business and negotiations and carefully managed relationships. He was not interested in what she had. He was not calculating how to benefit from her attention or her resources or her influence. He was interested in whether she was okay, in whether she was happy, and whether the life she had built was actually the life she wanted. It was the most disorienting kindness she had ever experienced. The board meeting was scheduled for Thursday. Claire had spent weeks preparing a proposal to restructure driver welfare maintenance standards and community investment. It would cost money in the short term, but it would build something sustainable in the long term, something she could be proud of. Ethan knew about the proposal. He had been working to undermine it since he found the draft. When Claire arrived, she found him already seated with 3 board members who owed their positions to his recommendations. The energy was hostile before anyone spoke. "The proposal is idealistic," Ethan said before Claire could finish her opening remarks. "It sacrifices quarterly performance for theoretical long-term benefits. Our investors did not sign up for philanthropy. Our investors signed up for a company with integrity," Claire responded. "Right now, we have drivers sleeping in their trucks because we do not pay them enough for hotels. We have mechanics working with equipment that should have been replaced 5 years ago in bays without proper ventilation. And our stock price has tripled. That is not despite those efficiencies, it is because of them." Claire looked around the table. She saw cautious faces, calculating faces. Darius Bennett was not in the room, but she thought of him anyway. Of the way he had taught his daughter that doing the right thing was not a transaction. "I am not asking for charity," Claire said. "I am asking for investment in the people who make this company work. Better conditions lead to better retention. Better retention leads to better service. That is not idealism. That is strategy." Ethan leaned forward. "This is about the mechanic, is it not? A stranger changes your tire and suddenly you want to change everything. This is about the fact that I have spent 20 years building something I am no longer proud of. A company that treats people like expenses instead of assets. That is not who I wanted to be." The room went silent. Board members exchanged glances, the kind of glances that calculated risk and measured alliances and tried to determine which way to jump. No one wanted to be on the wrong side of this moment, whatever side that turned out to be. Claire continued, "I am going to implement these changes with or without board approval, but I would rather have your support. I would rather build this together." The vote was closer than Claire expected, but in the end, the proposal passed by a single vote. Ethan resigned 2 days later. His departure was quiet and professional. Claire did not celebrate. She got to work. The story reached the media within a week. Someone leaked details of the proposal the board fight the connection to a small-town mechanic who had helped the CEO on the side of a highway. Reporters started calling Darius's phone at all hours, leaving voicemails that ranged from polite to desperate to borderline threatening. They showed up at his house with cameras and notebooks and perfectly practiced smiles. They wanted interviews, photographs, quotes about the woman who had changed her entire company because of a roadside act of kindness. Darius declined everything. He continued fixing cars in parking lots. He continued making dinner for Amara. He continued living his life as if nothing had changed, because for him, nothing had. Claire found him 3 weeks later working on a delivery van behind a restaurant. She had driven herself, leaving her phone at the office, telling no one where she was going. He did not seem surprised to see her. He straightened from under the hood, wiping his hands on the rag that seemed to live in his pocket, and waited. "You have been avoiding me," she said. "I have been giving you space to do what you need to do. You have been busy. I did not want to be a distraction. And if I said I needed to talk to you, if I said you are the one person I want to talk to right now," he considered this. "Then I would say, you could have called." "I did call. You did not answer." Darius smiled slightly. "Telemarketers have been aggressive lately." Claire laughed, and the sound surprised her. It felt genuine in a way that most of her interactions had not felt in years. "I wanted to thank you," she said again, "for everything. I did not do anything. I changed a belt and reconnected a wire. You reminded me why I started this company in the first place. You showed me what it looks like to help someone without expecting anything in return." Darius shook his head. "I fixed your car. Everything else you did yourself." Claire stepped closer. "You know that is not true." He met her eyes. She saw no calculation there, no ambition, just the same steady presence that had made her trust him from the first moment. "What do you want, Claire, not from me? What do you actually want from your life?" She considered the question. "I want to build something that lasts, something that helps people. I want to stop being lonely. I want Amara to grow up in a world where kindness is not remarkable, where helping strangers is normal, where people take care of each other." Darius nodded slowly. "That sounds like a lot of work." "It is, but I think it might be worth it." He was quiet for a moment. Then he picked up his wrench and turned back to the van. "I think so too." Claire watched him work for a while. The restaurant owner came out and offered her tea. Not recognizing her, just being hospitable. She accepted. She sat on an overturned crate and watched Darius Bennett fix an engine. And for the first time in 20 years, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. A year later, Whitmore Logistics had implemented every change Claire proposed and added several more. Driver retention improved by 40%. Maintenance costs dropped as equipment was properly maintained instead of run to failure. Community investments generated goodwill that translated into contracts and partnerships that aggressive tactics had never achieved. Darius still ran his mobile repair service 4 days a week, but now 3 days a week he consulted for Whitmore's maintenance division. Just as someone who knew how to fix things and how to teach others to do the same. He wore the same clothes he always wore. He drove the same truck. He refused every title they tried to give him. Amara was 8 now. She had met Claire's assistant and the security guard who worked the night shift at the Whitmore building. She had visited headquarters and asked pointed questions about why the break room sodas cost so much and why the mechanics did not have better chairs. She had informed her father in the car on the way home that Claire was nice but worked too much and that someone should probably tell her to take a vacation. Claire and Darius had not defined what they were to each other. They did not need to. Some relationships did not fit into categories. Some connections existed simply because they existed, and trying to name them would only diminish them. On a Sunday afternoon in early April, when the Ohio spring was finally winning its battle against winter, Claire drove to Darius's house. She found him and Amara in the backyard, assembling a birdhouse from a kit she had given Amara for her birthday. "You are early," Darius said, looking up from the instructions he was pretending to read. "Meeting ended ahead of schedule. I escaped before anyone could schedule another one." Amara looked up from the piece she was sanding. "Did you fire someone?" Claire laughed. "Not today, just boring paperwork." Amara nodded seriously, as if this made perfect sense, and returned to her work. Claire settled into a lawn chair with a broken armrest and watched them build. The birdhouse came together slowly, with many consultations of the instructions and several moments of confusion about which piece went where. Amara did most of the work, with Darius guiding her hands when she needed it and stepping back when she did not. She measured twice and cut once, just like her grandfather had taught her father, just like her father had taught her. She sanded the rough edges until they were smooth enough to touch without getting splinters. She applied the wood glue, carefully wiping away the excess with a rag, taking her time because rushing would mean doing it wrong, and doing it wrong would mean doing it again. Claire found herself thinking about all the things she had built over the years: companies, deals, strategies. None of them felt as real as this simple wooden box meant to hold something alive. Darius caught her watching. "Penny for your thoughts." Claire smiled. "Just thinking about what we repair and what we build new. How sometimes they are different things and sometimes they are the same thing. Sometimes they are," Darius agreed. "Sometimes fixing something is just building it again, better than it was before." Amara finished the last piece and held up the birdhouse with obvious pride. "Where should we put it?" Darius looked at Claire. "Where do you think?" Claire scanned the backyard. The old oak tree that had been there longer than the house. The fence that needed painting. The garden beds that Darius's mother had planted decades ago. Near the old oak, high enough to be safe from cats, but low enough that we can see it from the kitchen window. Amara carried her creation toward the tree, walking carefully as if the birdhouse were already full of birds. Darius moved to stand beside Claire. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For being here. For letting her know you. For not giving up on any of this." Claire watched Amara positioning the birdhouse against the trunk, trying to find the perfect spot. "She is remarkable. You have done something extraordinary with her. I just tried not to mess her up too badly. That is all parenting is, I think. Trying not to mess them up while figuring out how to do it right. Making it up as you go and hoping you are getting more things right than wrong. Hoping they will forgive you for the things you got wrong. That is all any of us are doing, trying not to mess things up while we figure out how to make them better." He laughed softly. "Fair point." They stood together in comfortable silence while Amara called for help mounting the birdhouse. Darius went to her and Claire followed, and together the three of them secured the small wooden structure to the old tree that had watched over this yard for generations. It was not a fairy tale ending. There were no declarations of love, no dramatic transformations, no sudden revelations that solved everything. Just three people in a backyard on a Sunday afternoon building something small together. But sometimes the small things were the ones that mattered most. Sometimes the most important repairs were the ones no one else could see. And sometimes a stranger on the side of the road turned out to be exactly the person you needed, arriving exactly when you needed them. Amara stepped back to admire their work. "Do you think birds will actually come?" Darius put his arm around her. "Eventually, we just have to be patient and wait." Claire looked at the birdhouse, then at Darius, then at the life she had somehow stumbled into from the shoulder of Route 17. I think I can manage that. Amara grinned. She says that now. Darius laughed. She is working on it. We all are. Claire smiled, not denying anything. Yes, I am working on it. The sun began to set over the small town in Ohio, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold that no amount of money could buy, no contract could secure, no board meeting could vote into existence. The birdhouse waited empty but ready, and three people walked back toward a house that had once felt lonely and now felt like something else entirely. Something that might, with time and patience and care, come to feel like